This podcast is supported by Progressive, a leader in RV insurance. RVs are for sharing adventures with family, friends, and even your pets. So if you bring your cats and dogs along for the ride, you'll want Progressive RV insurance. They protect your cats and dogs like family by offering up to $1,000 in optional coverage for vet bills in case of an RV accident, making it a great companion for the responsible pet owner who loves to travel. See Progressive's other benefits and more when you quote RV insurance at Progressive.com today. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Pet injuries and additional coverage and subject to policy terms.
It's The Other Side of Midnight with Frank Morano.
This is The Other Side of Midnight. I'm Frank Morano. Thank you for listening. You know, yesterday I was sharing the story, and it's not like I discovered the story. I didn't break the story. It was widely reported of the 35-year-old father of multiple children. I think he's got either 4 children or 6 children in Lakewood, New Jersey, who left his child, 4-month-old infant, in the car, not on a particularly hot day. And he forgot that he had the infant in the car, went into yeshiva, where I think he worked or was a student, one of the two, and left the child in the car. The car died. The baby died. Now, this was not a particularly hot day. It was only 60-something degrees outside, but the temperature within the car, they say, got to about 95 degrees, and the baby died. And I've been just, whenever I hear these stories, and you know, I'm a father of a 3-year-old, so maybe it resonates more with me than others. It's all I can think about. It's all I could think about. So I've been kind of researching, and I was chatting about this yesterday with where things are when it comes to these hot car stories, how common they are, what's going on legislatively, because I remember there was an attempt in Congress to have these backseat sensors. And I discovered this terrific group, at least I think it's a terrific group, called Kids and Car Safety, that is all about protecting children from issues with cars, not just hot cars, but cars stolen with children inside, or vehicles that are submerged, or really anything that involves being a danger to children in cars. And the president and founder of this group, Kids and Car Safety, is Janette Fennell, who has been at this for a while. Janette, thanks so much for either getting up early or staying up late with us. Thanks very much.
I'm happy to be with you.
Janette, you've got a very interesting story, a life story that has sparked your activism going back about 30 years. I know it might be a difficult thing for you to talk about, but you and your husband were in the midst of a traumatic situation. Tell folks, if you're comfortable, what happened, and then how that led you to the work you're doing now.
Yeah, no problem. After 30 years, I've told this story quite a few times, so it doesn't really bother me anymore, because so much good has really come out of it. But it was Halloween weekend, and we were living in San Francisco. And as we were coming home and, put the garage door up, before the garage door could come all the way down, 2 masked men with loaded guns rolled in underneath the garage door and, put a gun in our face and told us to get in the trunk of our car. And, obviously this is a pretty scary situation to be in, but, I'll try to make a long story as short as I can. So we were put in the trunk of our car, and, we had a 9-month-old baby at that time. And, he was sleeping, because we had driven home from dinner. And in the trunk, they start to back up, and I'm like, can you hear the baby? Can you hear the baby? And then I hear them say, there's a baby, because up to that point, they didn't realize it. So it seems like 3 seconds later, they pull out and take us through the ride of our life in the trunk, and we're trying to, hear if we can hear the baby. But he was sound asleep, when we pulled into the garage. So we're going through the streets of San Francisco. We're praying. We have no idea what's going on. Nothing makes sense. And I remember saying to my husband, I just saw this program on Oprah, and it said that if you don't get away in the first 5 minutes, it's over. I said, so well, we can't worry about that, and we couldn't run, because of the baby being with us. So here we are, like I said, going through the streets of San Francisco. There's 2 adults in the trunk of our car, and as they're speeding through the streets, bottoming out the car. And, you think you're going to die. You have no idea where you're going. You have no access to anything. So I think this adrenaline just kind of builds up in your body, and I started ripping at anything I could in the trunk. And, I ripped all the carpeting off the edges. I should note that I was closest to the bumper and my husband was closest to the back seat. So we were like head to foot in that trunk. And just started pulling on these wires that were, that I saw behind the carpeting that I ripped out. So we're driving along, and, you can kind of tell where you're going or where you are, but we went from surface streets to the freeway. And I'm like, oh, no, where are they taking us? And my idea then was if I pulled on those wires that I had exposed, maybe we could give a message, to the outside world that something's wrong. This car is flickering, or the brake lights are out, or there's some sort of a fireworks show, and get pulled over. And then, we could say, we're in the trunk, save us. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. So we're on the freeway for a while, and then, we could tell they took an exit ramp. And then you could tell we were on surface streets again. And then they went off-road. And that's when I said to my husband, that's it. I mean, they're going to rape me. They're going to cut us up. We're dead. And my husband, being the wonderful man that he is, said, I don't know what's going to happen, but know that I love you. So we were basically saying our last goodbyes. So finally the car stopped, and we heard him say, get it set right. Make sure you get it set right. And that didn't mean anything to us. And in my mind, the only thing I could think is like that they took the baby out and they were going to, put him somewhere where we could see him and put a gun to his head and say, if you don't do this and you don't do that, we're going to kill him. So, it just never made sense. But finally, they came over and they were talking to us through the trunk, and then they finally opened the trunk. And I've got, bad back, so this was not a comfortable position to be in for a long period of time. But I also popped my head up because I wanted to try to get a sense for where they had taken us. And that's when I got hit in the back of the head with the butt of a gun. Oof. And shoved back down and said, don't you be looking around. So I didn't do that anymore. And they proceeded, to rob us and take our jewelry and take our bank cards, just take everything. And then asking for the PIN number, asked several times. And the last thing they said to us before they closed the trunk again was, if this isn't the right PIN number, we're going to come back and kill you. So, those probably wouldn't seem to be calming words, but we gave them the right PIN number, and the fact that they were leaving, sounded like a good situation to us. And then they were gone. So when I was, ripping out all of these carpeting and these wires, I looked in this area. Now, remember, the car is not running. I probably forgot to mention they had taken us in the middle of a forest, so there was no light source. Totally impossible. There's no scientific or engineering way that could happen. But back there where I pulled out all those wires, I saw a little light. And I said to my husband, I think I found the trunk release. And again, I'm not that smart. Those words came out of my mouth, but I don't think they came from my brain. And he didn't see the light, so I put his hands, over in this area, and he felt around, and, he's mechanical and can figure stuff out, and he felt that cable that when you're inside the car, and you push or pull the button to open the trunk, he pulled that cable and bing, the trunk opened just like it would as if you had done it from inside the passenger compartment, which was just unbelievable. So I, jump out of there and go to the back seat, and there is no baby. There is no car seat. There is nothing. And, obviously beyond the worst moment of my life. So, my husband gets out. He's a little bit more cautious. He's looking around. And fortunately, we had one of those credit card type keys at the time that it's plastic and it pops out and it's a one-use type of thing. So we didn't know where we were, but, I could see the lights of the city on the left. So, we were able to drive, and I was writing down streets and things because we didn't know where we were, and eventually got to a payphone. I kept saying, let's go home, let's go home. My husband kept saying, no, we're going to call 911. And, of course, he was right. And so he's in this phone booth, and I'm sitting there in the car. And within a minute of calling 911, this car pulls up, and 4 guys jump out, and they have on ponchos and grubby. And I'm like, oh, I knew we shouldn't have stopped. And unbeknownst to me at the time, they were undercover cops. So it kind of gives you a sense for the area that we were taken to.
Sure. Still getting around to that fix on your car? You got this. On eBay, you'll find millions of parts guaranteed to fit. Doesn't matter if it's a major engine repair or your first time swapping your windshield wipers. eBay has that part you need, ready to click perfectly into place for changes big and small. Loud or quiet, find all the parts you need at prices you'll love. Guaranteed to fit every time. But you already know that. eBay. Things, people, love. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
Running a business comes with a lot of what-ifs. But luckily, there's a simple answer to them. Shopify. It's the commerce platform behind millions of businesses, including Thrive Cosmetics and Momofuku. And it'll help you with everything you need. From website design and marketing to boosting sales and expanding operations, Shopify can get the job done and make your dream a reality. Turn those what-ifs into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
Experience a progressive lens engineered with AI from Essilor, powered by individual measurements of your visual behavior. A lens personalized to you by an Essilor expert. Discover Verilux XR Track and enjoy instantly sharp vision in motion and seamless transitions from near to far. Find your local Essilor expert today at Essilor.com.
Clorox Sentiva smells like grapefruit. Cleans like Clorox. And feels like...
Okay, we could be here all day. Try Clorox Sentiva for a trusted clean with long-lasting freshness. Also available in lavender and coconut. Use as directed.
38 minutes after the hour, if people are just tuning in, this is The Other Side of Midnight. We're talking with the president and founder of Kids and Car Safety, Janette Fennell, a little bit about what spurred her activism and a rather traumatic event 30 years ago. And so when these undercover police officers came, to, I guess, rescue you and your husband, what then happened? Was that the end of the story?
Oh, no, that was not the end of the story. A couple minutes later, uniform officers pulled up, and my husband, like I said, was talking to 911, and they sent an officer to our home, and, just to see if there was anything there. And, we waited and waited, and finally, a 911 operator came back and said that an officer had found our baby in his car seat sitting out in front of our home in the middle of the night. And, you know, I always say this little side story is because he was 9 months at the time, and in San Francisco, we really don't have front yards. We just have a sidewalk. And if he hadn't been in his car seat, he would have just, you know, crawled right into the street and wouldn't be with us. But so car seats can save a child's life sometimes, even if it isn't in the car.
Jeez. So that experience then led you to become an activist for a new federal regulation that every trunk had to have an internal release mechanism, and that's standard, and it's now been standard for some time, right?
Right. We were able to get that passed, and it's any vehicle, doesn't matter where on earth it's made, but if it's sold or leased here in the United States, and it's 2002 or newer, it comes with this glow-in-the-dark trunk release. But the best part of the whole story, forget everything else, is that not one person has died in the trunk of a car that has that glow-in-the-dark release.
Wow.
So that's really where, you know, all the glory goes to, and so there is a happy ending.
That is absolutely wonderful. So you founded this terrific group, Kids and Car Safety. What's the goal of the group? What was the impetus behind the founding of the group, and where is most of your activism focused these days?
Well, what I found, you know, after this happened to us, and the officer said, you know, it never ends this way. I'm like, what are they talking about? And, you know, they said that you don't have to have much of an imagination when you look at the different things we went through, you know, that most people don't walk away relatively unharmed. So that kind of like stuck in my head, like, how does it end? How does it end? Well, I decided this is crazy. How could you lock somebody in their own trunk? And, you know, thoughts back to the old days when you couldn't put your refrigerator out on the lawn anymore because kids were getting in there and they couldn't get out and dying that way. So, you know, there were a lot of parallels. But what was the biggest problem was there was no data. And as you know, in our country, no data, no problem. So I literally had to build a database to prove that trunk entrapment was indeed an issue. And what this opened up was this whole can of worms and, you know, showed me that when we hear 40-some thousand people die on our roads and highways every year, the only people that get in that database, number one, were involved in a crash. Number two, that crash has to happen on a public road or highway. And three, that the person dies within 30 days of the incident. So when I, you know, couldn't find any information about trunk entrapment, it's because it wasn't in most cases, it's not a crash. In most cases, it doesn't happen on a public road or highway. And then, you know, the person dying within 30 days becomes a little irrelevant. So here's this whole, you know, situation with no data. So and this is before Google. So, but there were some search engines, and, you know, I put in locked in the trunk, and, you know, I didn't know how to refine a search. So I'd get 10,000 matches and I'd read them all. And I'd get to 3,080, and then it would be a case, and, you know, I would document it. So I literally had to build from scratch a database to prove to people. Yeah, and you couldn't be dead. I didn't take any of these mafia cases where they're dead and they get put in the trunk. You had to be alive before you put in the trunk before I would count it. But, it literally was obviously a passion project.
Sure.
But it really brought to light this whole missing piece of information.
Yeah.
You know, personally, I think, it doesn't really matter where something happens with your vehicle if there's a interaction with a vehicle and someone gets hurt or killed, it should be in the data, and it wasn't.
No doubt about it. If folks are just tuning in, this is The Other Side of Midnight. I'm Frank Morano. My guest is Janette Fennell. She is the president and founder of Kids and Car Safety. So you clearly, there's no telling how many lives you saved with that change in federal regulation regarding trunks and that internal mechanism. There's been calls for a different type of safety regulation when it comes to a back seat sensor, so we don't have issues like the hot car death that I mentioned in New Jersey. Now, my car is a newer car. It has a back seat sensor. I remember Congress was debating this in a highway safety bill a couple of years ago. Is it actually the law now that every car has to have a backseat sensor, or is that something that car manufacturers are just doing on their own?
Well, that's a fabulous question. And, I have been working on this issue of keeping kids safe in and around motor vehicles, as you said, for 30 years. And in fact, October 5th, we're having our 30-year anniversary party in Kansas City.
Wonderful.
But everyone's invited. But anyway, we have worked, on several different issues. So the first one was on safer power window switches. You know how there used to be a toggle or a rocker?
Right.
Now you have to scoop your finger underneath you. It's a pull-up, push-down switch.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that you have to put your foot on your brake before you can take your car out of gear. We did that. One that a lot of people know about, they probably don't know we're the ones who did it, but kids were being backed over because you can't see them, and they were being backed over in driveways and in parking lots. Again, all of these have this non-traffic edge to it. So we were able, took 15 years, but we were able to get a federal regulation on all of these things. But the one we were able to do for the backovers was now that all vehicles, 2018 and newer, again, doesn't matter where they're made, but if they're sold or leased here in the U.S., they come with the rear view camera as standard equipment. Automakers were charging anywhere from $2,000 to $5,000 to $10,000 to have a backup camera, and now they're standard equipment. So now, we've taken care of the power windows and kids knocking cars into gear and being backed over. And for 20 years, we have been working on trying to get technology in vehicles so children are not left alone. And I do have to correct you just a little bit.
Please, yes.
You talk about your new car, and you talk about a sensor in the back seat. It's not a sensor, and it senses nothing. What's happening in this technology that you're experiencing is that it's door sequencing. So anytime you open the back door before you leave on your trip, that when you arrive at your destination, you're going to get a message or a beep or something that says, check the back seat.
Right. Okay. That's what it does. Right. Okay.
Yeah. Right. And but the bad thing is people don't understand how it works, and they think it's like maybe a weight sensor or something, and it isn't. All it does is tell you that you open the back door. I mean, you can put a bag of Cheetos back there, and you're still going to say, check the back seat. And I'm not saying that's bad, because it's certainly better than nothing. But the problem is we have already documented at least 7 children who have died in cars that have that door sequencing. So it's not working, and yes, as part of the infrastructure bill, I love it when you say Congress is debating this bill. I'm like, I think you should say there are safety advocates who are fighting, they're clawing their way to try to get these safety features in vehicles, and we were able to get a provision in the infrastructure bill that require technology to be put in vehicles so that children won't die in hot cars. So, obviously we're excited because it took forever to get some language in the bill.
Great. Well, so as of now, any car that's sold in the United States, irrespective of where it's made, will have some technology that that is meant to mitigate leaving children in hot cars in the back seat.
No.
No.
No, I'm sorry. We get the law passed, right? But then, after a law is passed, it's quite a long, drawn-out process. Then it has to go over to the Department of Transportation. And the particular agency within the Department of Transportation that we work with is the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration. People call it NHTSA because that's an awful lot of words to have to say.
Mm-hmm.
So NHTSA is the ones that are charged with keeping us safe on our roads and highways and making sure the vehicles that we drive are safe. Well, they get involved, and then they're supposed to write a regulation, based on, what Congress told them to do. And then there's a comment period, and then a final rule is issued. Well, all of that was supposed to be accomplished by December 2023. And unfortunately, they haven't even written the regulation.
Oh, boy.
So they're over 2 years behind. And we were really, really hoping something could come out before December 2024. Because with a change in administration, you never know what you're going to get. So when I say yes and no, what the automakers did to try to undermine, getting legislation passed is they do what they call a voluntary agreement. And again, it's what you're talking. It's door sequencing. It doesn't cost them anything. And all it is, a software change. And they tout how great this is, but kids are still dying, and it's not at all what they say it is. And at the same time, we've been working, trying to get this final rule in the books, in the Federal Register, and we're just not there yet. But the law's still on the book, and they still have to do their job, but who knows what's going to happen now, right?
Well, Janette, I hope you'll come back because I've learned a lot just in the last few minutes, and I commend you and thank you for your efforts on behalf of all motorists, but especially children. And I want to encourage everybody to check out your website, kidsandcars.org. That's kidsandcars.org. There's a lot of information on there, not only about hot cars, but backovers, cars stolen with children inside, vehicle submersion, and a lot of other dangers that people may not be aware of. So, Janette, thanks for the time this evening or this morning.
My pleasure.
Thank you. If you want to comment, you can certainly do so. 646-720-0635. That's 646-720-0635. This is The Other Side of Midnight. Straight ahead.
The Other Side of Midnight.